Hello and welcome back. Eddie Rodasovich, George Stoya here from the SoonersGroup.com studios. Josh McQuiston back in Houston at Scoop HQ down there, south of the border, kind of, south of the Oklahoma-Texas border. Oklahoma falls to 4-4 on the season, 1-4 in conference play. Welcome back to a Gameday Rewind here on the SoonersGroup.com YouTube channel. Gentlemen, it was interesting, to say the least.
These feel like these are so sad every single week.
Well, they should be. They should be. This is a bad football team. It's somewhat embarrassing for the University of Oklahoma right now, but they're working their way through it. And I guess we'll start here, Josh. Somehow, some way, and I think that because the offense has been so bad, because of the moves that Brent Venables made 2 weeks ago with firing of Seth Luttrell, there was so much, wondering what this thing was going to look like. Oklahoma walked into halftime with a 14-10 lead. Oklahoma finished off probably its best drive of the season, a 13-play, 92-yard drive following a fourth down stop in the red zone to take the lead. And I think there was a lot of people, we talked about it on the Eskridge Lexus postgame show or a postgame podcast. I thought they were maybe going to win the football game. You're getting the ball at a halftime. You found an offensive rhythm. You found an offensive or just success overall on the offensive side of the football that I don't think that there was a lot of people really truly expecting. Let's go first half, and then we'll work our way into the second half. Just from a schematic game plan standpoint, it seemed like Joe John and the offensive staff, they had a pretty good game plan for Jackson Arnold and company on Saturday.
I don't think there's any question, guys. I mean, you look at how confident Jackson Arnold looked. That's as comfortable as I've seen him all year. Like he looked like a guy that he knew what he was seeing. He knew what he was supposed to do from snap to snap. Like he knew what the game plan was. I think he played within it because there were a couple times in the first half. And, as I'm going through the Monday Morning Idiot, you can see where you're like, okay, he could have pulled the trigger there, but he realized like, I don't need to take that chance. Like I don't need to put this, we know what kind of game we're playing here. And I think he was really smart about it. I thought they did a good job accentuating Javonte Barnes, who, guys, had 60-something yards, and it may have been his best game at Oklahoma. Like, I thought Javonte Barnes on a lot of levels was really, really good. And, guys, I know people are going to hate this. The offensive line was at least satisfactory in the first half. Like, I'm not going to say they were outstanding or amazing or anything, but going against a defensive line that has four guys who are going to be NFL draft picks, and I mean going to be, I can't find a lot of flaws in that first half.
Josh, I want to ask you, because you know X's and O's better than most, I would say. Was it something they did schematically differently for Oklahoma? I know that maybe some of the motion stuff was different. Was the run game any different? Were they running different plays, or was it just simply maybe they dumbed things down and everybody? It didn't seem like there was a lot of confusion, number one. And it also felt like they weren't putting some of their offensive linemen in positions where they won't succeed, whereas previous weeks, or tight ends even too, where they're putting guys in positions where they're not going to be able to succeed. What did you see from them schematically that was maybe different?
George, I thought, and you and I had talked about it for several weeks. I know we all had. I thought they simplified things. Like you saw a lot of the same stuff, guys. Like zone insert, inside zone. Like you saw a lot of the stuff that we're all familiar with. We've seen OU run a bunch of, especially in the run game. But I thought they did it. They were better with their timing. They looked a little crisper. I don't know if they cut some of the playbook out or if it was just bringing back more of that RPO that, again, guys, they ran all off season. Like, there's no doubt that Jackson Arnold's very comfortable and understands the ideals of the RPO, even if at times early in the year it did not look like he did. Like, I get why Brent felt like he had to make the choice he made from not just, changing quarterbacks, but saying, hey, we're going to cut out some of this RPO stuff. It didn't look right early in the year. This looked more like the Jackson Arnold I thought we'd see early in the year. Like, I thought you would see a lot of this. And again, I don't think they did anything crazy, but I thought they did a good job. Like we talked about, creating matchups, creating situations like they throw the quick swing pass to Bauer Sharp there early. I think it was in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And all they did was have a bunch set to the right Ole Miss's eyes, all their bodies are over to the short side of the field, and they just sprint Bauer Sharp out. Now, there's a linebacker responsible for Bauer Sharp, but he's got to play catch up. He's trying to catch Bauer Sharp, but he can't do it. And Oklahoma's like, yeah, sure, we'll take free 20 yards. Like, I mean, it wasn't like they reinvented the wheel. They just stopped trying to make everything so hard. And more than anything, and as we've screamed about for weeks, they stopped trying to be things they're not. They didn't try to pound the ball right at Ole Miss. They ran off tackle. They did some stuff to put the defensive ends and edge players in conflict. And that slowed down that pass rush for a big chunk of that game. Now, obviously, we'll get into what happened in the second half, but I think that run game is a big part of why they were able to kind of make that. They were protecting that offensive line a little bit.
Jackson Arnold goes 10 for 13, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 rushes, 44 yards. We mentioned ending the half with the 13-play, 92-yard touchdown drive, the longest of the season. Javonte Barnes, as you mentioned, Josh, goes 12 carries, 50 yards, also had 3 receptions for 38 yards. Perhaps most importantly, as it will become a theme in the second half for Oklahoma, they go 7 for 9 on third down. Season high in third down category is 8 that they converted against Tulane way back when. Obviously, things changed, but you go back into the end of the first half, and things were coming together. Now, they were, granted, and we talked about this on the podcast after the game, they were getting some stuff from Ole Miss. There was personal fouls that were extending drives, that were extending series, giving Oklahoma free first downs, but they were taking advantage of it. I didn't even have a problem with them going for it on the first series of the game offensively. When you get down to the red zone for a team that struggled as much as they have to get down there and put points on the board, might as well go for it. Might as well be aggressive.
I couldn't agree more, guys. I don't know how George feels about that, but guys, when you're looking at what they've been doing offensively, you can't count on, we're going to get down here again. We're going to do this multiple times. Like, there's no way. I mean, I'm sure Brent Venables would never own to this, but there's no way they were thinking they were going to have the kind of first half they did offensively. Like, I just don't believe that. So when you get in that situation, you're thinking, we've got a chance to tie the game here in the first, 7-8 minutes of the game. Yeah, 100%. Let's take it, because our defense just had one of its own worst drives of the season. So that felt like you were going to get back to even money. Now, did I love the way that call was made and executed? No, I don't love the fourth down call. I liked the idea of it, but the way they implemented it, I wasn't nuts about that. But that's another topic entirely. I liked a lot of the scheme. I liked a lot of what they did in the first half, and I thought that's what you've got to do in those situations, especially in the SEC. Like, kicking field goals, I mean, not to say that you don't have times for it, because there's times when you're just not going to convert. But 4th and 1 at the 1, what's the worst case? You're not going to get any points. Okay, great. But you're going to force them to drive 99 yards, and if you can get off the field defensively, hey, your offense is facing a short field again. So, like, I think that's just good, sound football, especially in the situation that Oklahoma's facing right now.
Watching those clips, I forgot how many times Jackson escaped the pocket and made a play with his legs.
It's crazy to think about, but when you just add up the yards gained, he went over 100 yards rushing on Saturday, but you only see 36 in the final game book because of all the sacks in the second half.
I thought Josh, and you alluded to it earlier, I thought Jackson played pretty damn good. Look, he was getting beat up, especially late in that game, and there was a couple times that maybe he held on to the ball a little too long, especially in the second half, but I think it's because he's trying to let things develop downfield and trying to make a big play that maybe wasn't there, especially late in that game. But overall, Josh, what'd you think of Jackson Arnold's day? And I thought, Josh, one thing that I saw, you said it earlier, there's a few times he's going through his progressions, he doesn't see what he likes, and he just dumps it out to the running back. And that feels like something that we have talked about a lot, that they were not doing early in the season, him or Michael Hawkins, where they've got a guy open in the flat, let him make a play, and you saw Javonte make a few big plays in the passing game that
Said
way.
It was something that Kevin Johns really emphasized over this past week, as you see Kevin Johns there working with some of the offensive guys now in the quarterback room for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree, George. Like, I thought Jackson, I think it's safe to say probably the best quarterback performance we've seen so far this year. Like, just far as
that's fair.
Given the opponent,
what they wanted the offense to be, what they were trying to do. I thought it was as clean as we've seen. Now, it tells you where the bar is, that those numbers are OU's best quarterback performance. But you got to start somewhere, guys. And I thought this was growth. Now, again, I struggle with that. You're like, oh God, we're here where
Yes.
this is what you're, like this is what it is, but it is like that. This is a vast improvement over what we've seen the previous 2 weeks with Texas and South Carolina. So I think you can take some hope in that, and maybe Oklahoma can build on it. Now, we're going to have to talk about some of the problems that existed, especially in the second half, and what Oklahoma looks like they're going to be dealing with. But there are things that OU can use here. And guys, one of the stories that I don't think enough people are talking about, it feels like Taylor Tatum's starting to grow up a little bit, like starting to put it together and maybe becoming a playmaker, which, Lord, if there's anything this offense could use, it's a guy who can be dynamic.
No doubt. Obviously, you're gonna have to get through the fumble there. You got to be able to hold on to the football, but there are plays to be made, and it seems like Taylor Tatum is getting a little bit more comfortable. Let's move into the second half, Josh. And we can get to the defense here shortly. This is an offensive show. Everybody knows that when you're as bad as they've been offensively, and you start moving the football and you get 2 touchdowns, it's something to be celebrated. It was back to a lot of what we've seen there in the third quarter. And, I think the most frustrating thing is, and you look at every one of these series here to begin the second half, Oklahoma is obviously getting the ball out of the third quarter. You have a 14-10 lead. All of a sudden, you're staring at a 3rd and 4 on that first series. Bauer Sharp gets a false start. All of a sudden, you're now back into 3rd and 9. It just seems like it's little things continually, especially when you try to get any type of momentum, that they shoot themselves in the foot. And, I don't know. I think your dad had a pretty good line on the Eskridge Lexus postgame podcast. You want to check that out. Sam Stoya joined us after the game on Saturday evening. Average players commit penalties. I think that was a great line coming from Sam Stoya on Saturday night, because you look at it, they had a 3rd and 4. They're not able to convert, obviously got pushed back to 3rd and 9, 3rd and 3 on the second drive. Arnold passes over the middle to Bauer Sharp, who, does he drop it? Does he not? I don't know. Maybe you get into a 4th and short even if he's able to hold on to the football. The third series, you're in 2nd and 8. Heath Ozida gets a holding call that pushes him back. Can't play behind the sticks. Started the fourth quarter. The 4th series in the second half, you have a 3rd and 5, and Arnold rushes for 2 yards, and they're not able to convert on 4th down. So bunch of missed opportunities, it seems like. And then you get into the back end of the game when all hell broke loose, and Jackson Arnold was basically just trying to survive.
Yeah, guys, I mean, Eddie, I think you said it really well, that the third quarter was what we've seen so much from this offense. Like, it's the death by 1,000, razors, like just little bitty cuts where you're like, God, if you could just get out of your own way, stop doing these things. And for the first 2 quarters, they didn't do that to themselves. They didn't kill themselves. They didn't do the little painful things, because, guys, whatever growth this offense showed, it's not good enough to get themselves out of trouble when they're looking at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11. Like, they can't pick that up with any regularity you can count on. So I thought that was what they did as well as anything in the first half, was 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. Have that defense on their heels. They've got to guess what you're doing. You've got a lot of options, because even if you don't convert, you can go for it on 4th and 2. Like, fine, no problem. Like, that's a gettable down. So again, I think there is it's a sign that, like, what we've heard them talk about, and to be fair to Seth Luttrell, it's even what Seth Luttrell talked about. Like, if they could just stop making these mental errors, there was some good stuff there to be had. And again, I don't think it even includes some of the Brennan Thompson talk, where it sounds like Brennan Thompson had several moments where he really could have made some plays for Oklahoma. And I'm not faulting Jackson Arnold. That guy was running for his life. What I will say, and I meant to say it earlier when you asked me about Jackson, Eddie, one of the things that stood out to me, I thought his demeanor in the pocket was really good. Like, I thought his timing and feel for, okay, I got to go now. I got to get out of here. Like, I thought his clock, for lack of a better word, I kind of always hated that term. I thought his clock was really good. Like, he really, okay, I can stay in here. Nope, I got to go. Like, I thought his feel for all of that was really good, which is crazy to say in a game where all these sacks happen. But when you're under that much pressure, sometimes you're going to stick in there, and sometimes you're going to stick a little too long.
Josh, I thought a big turning point in the game was when Jacob Sexton went down. Jacob was playing maybe his best game as a Sooner, and he goes down. I think it was in the second quarter with an
ankle injury, goes out, gets taped, comes back into the game, and then gets taken out by one of his own teammates on the knee there. And it certainly sounds like Jake's going to be gone for quite a while. I don't expect him back this season. Maybe. Certainly not this week against Maine. But you're right. Logan Howland comes into the game. I believe it was the first snap after Jacob Sexton leaves the game. Jackson Arnold meets Princely for the first time all game. The number that Gabe Eichert had thrown out, first 76 snaps, they had allowed 1 sack. That was the 1 sack. And then it just once the ball started rolling down the hill, it was an avalanche. The final outcome is 10 sacks on the day for Ole Miss. Didn't seem like they were generating, or they weren't blitzing a ton. They were just getting beat up front. You saw the sacks there a second ago. 39 sacks now allowed on the season. Oklahoma, historically, the most they've given up in a season is 41 sacks back in 2015. They're surely going to get there. It's one of the worst offensive lines, Oklahoma's put out on the field in a long time. Certainly maybe one of the worst offensive units in the country here coming up, as we get out of game number 8.
Yeah. My question for Josh.
It's embarrassing. It's pathetic. I don't understand how they're so bad. Continue, George.
I am with you, Eddie. My question though, Josh, was how big of a difference was that? Because I think we all like Logan Howland's potential. He's a guy that's moving from tight end. It's going to take some time and it's a tough assignment to go out there and defend the guy that he was. We were talking before we got on here. I mean, Princely's possibly a first-round draft pick, in the future. So how did you see maybe – I don't know if the game plan changed at all, Josh, but how much of a difference was that when Sexton went out?
Oh, it was huge, especially from a pass blocking situation where Jake I thought was doing a nice job over there on the corner. Not perfect, not exemplary, but like good. Like he playing like a guy that's got a lot of experience. It's third year in the program, that kind of stuff. Logan was crazy, and I'm just getting kind of into it where Jacob Sexton's officially out, and he's left with the knee. As I watch it, I see Logan Howland doing good stuff in the run game, moving bodies, doing some stuff, kind of using his base to move guys around. As a pass blocker, and I won't steal the thunder because Gabe brought this up weeks ago, and I certainly saw it long before I did. But it's just true. Like he has this thing where he panics, and he keeps opening up, and he's just letting defenders run by him. He's keeping because he's got no ability to create any force. Like as he turns and gets almost parallel with the sidelines, there's you're giving that defender a two-way go. He can go anywhere he wants to go because you're not cutting him off in any direction. So it's real tough, and he's real narrow, and it's a young guy. These are the growing pains. Guys, we talked about this. Not, I've already pissed off people on the corner with this, but people are like, play the young guys, play the young guys. This is what happens, guys. Like, you want to play the young guys, there's going to be growing pains. Now, I'm not telling you that was an extreme version of it, because it was real, real bad in the fourth quarter. Like there's no question that it looked like Logan Howland started struggling. Princely, you and me, Ellen, figured out what he could do, and then was like, okay, I'm just going to do this every play. And, that's what a good guy's going to do. That's what NFL people do to you. Once they find your weakness, they're going to keep poking it until you figure out a way to stop it, and Oklahoma never could.
It's going to be real. Yep, go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm wrapping on. I'm going too far. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's promise with Logan Howland, but that he does the same thing in that pass set, and they're going to have to stop that, or this is going to continue.
I think what's going to be interesting now, too, and we've talked about it most of the season, the injury situation's not good up front. They've had to rotate a lot of different guys. I think the stat I put out there was Oklahoma's starting unit on Saturday was the 7th in 8 games this year.
I think that's good.
And and I wouldn't be shocked if we have another different one this week against Maine, especially with Jacob Sexton being out. And you hope maybe Jake Taylor can, I thought it was we didn't talk about it a ton, but Jake Taylor not making the trip to Oxford ended up being huge, because in that situation, if Jake Taylor would have been there, you could have played him at right, moved Tarquin over to left, and you could have survived maybe a little bit longer there, whereas you're forced to play a guy like Logan Howland. And I like Logan, and I think he deserves, like, this week, it would be a good week against Maine to get him some more reps, just get him some time on the football field, and build up some of that strength that maybe he doesn't have right now. But I don't know, moving forward, it's grim, man, because you lose Sexton, who, look, I don't think he had been playing great this year, probably not even good at times this season, but he's been moved around a lot of positions. He's been solid. Like, he's been one guy that you kind of know what you're getting from him at least. And now all of a sudden you might be having to play somebody like a Logan Howland the rest of the way, depending on how serious Jake Taylor's injury is.
Complete disaster. Got it. All right. It's bad. And this is like taking a moral victory almost out of what they were able to put together in the first half, because I think maybe you can win 2 more games this season. Obviously, getting bowl eligible is going to be the biggest rallying cry right now for Oklahoma.
Yep.
4-4. Josh, flip side of the football, you hold Ole Miss to 69 yards rushing on 31 attempts, 2.2 average. You got a couple times through the air, right? They had some big plays. I think the number was that Teddy Lehman threw out on the Oklahoma breakdown. 60% of the 311 that comes off of Jackson Dart's right arm came on 6 plays, 6 massive plays for Oklahoma, or for Ole Miss. They did that without Trey Harris. The pre-scoring kid had a pretty good day for Ole Miss at the tight end position. That'd be nice to have. It just seems like another game in which you can't really say, hey, that was terrible by any means. They got beat a couple times, but for the most part, it was a defensive performance that kept you in the football game.
Absolutely. And George, do you feel like we're trying to keep Eddie afloat here? Like this is an unusual one where I feel like Eddie is the one that's really...
1-4 in conference play. They're the embarrassment of the Southeastern Conference, our new neighbors. They're like, where the hell did these people come from? I thought that they were rich, and it turns out that we've just been living off of a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme for a couple years.
Well, I mean, there is a place just north of Norman. It's Beverly Hills. So this is the Beverly Hillbillies. Oklahoma's just moved in to the SEC. It
might have gone with Jed Clampett on the drive west, just try to get dysentery and call it a day. What did you think about the defensive performance?
I thought it was pretty solid. I heard the same stat from Teddy. Guys, does that seem like that would be fairly normal to you? Like that, I don't think that's one of those stats that sounds really interesting, but I'm guessing in this era of big play offenses, I would bet that's probably right a lot of the times. Like where you're getting a huge, 50, 55% of your passes or your yardage from 6, 7, 8, maybe 30% of your snaps. So I don't know that that's right, but I thought that was kind of one of those things where I'd like to look at that a little bit more and kind of see how that relates to other things. But again, I thought Oklahoma did a pretty solid job. You look at the first one, I was breaking down that down on the idiot where they hit the little corner route to the outside. Kip Lewis does what he's supposed to do, kind of creates a collision, releases the tight end. Eli Bowen does not release the receiver to Robert Spears Jennings. And, he's a true freshman corner. He just follows him up the field. He kind of forgets his own principles. And the wide receiver is wide open. And that it's going to happen sometimes. Like, there was nothing there where you're like, this is egregious. This is bad. The one, and I thought you guys nailed it, and we were talking about it in the group chat during the game, but the one where Jackson Dart scrambling to his right on 3rd and 16, that's a great freaking play, man. Like, you just got to say, okay, like, great, good job on you. I know people want to kill the corners on some of that stuff, and there were some where absolutely OU needs to be better. But at the same time, I mean, that's just a great football play by Jackson Dart. It's a great play by the receiver. There's not a lot I have a problem with there. So I think when you're excuse me, when your tail spinning like Oklahoma is right now, there's this tendency to be like every moment, like, oh, that's garbage, oh, that's trash. Jackson Dart's a good football player. He's played a lot of football. Like, that's a good offense. They got some guys who can make some plays. If you'd have told me they go to Oxford in the preseason, you say they go to Oxford and they give up 26 points, say, OU wins that game. Yeah. Like, I would have believed that wholeheartedly. Now, we know that's not where Oklahoma is now, but again, I'm with you guys. At 14-10 at half, I was like, they're going to win this game. I don't know how they're doing it, but I think they're going to win this freaking game.
Josh, a couple guys I want to ask you about defensively. Kenai Walker getting a lot of slack right now. Obviously, the play you mentioned, he was the guy that, I mean, you can say he got beat. That's just a hell of a football play. But I think it was 2 plays later he gets beat on the double move. And some of that's going to happen in college football. Ole Miss has good players. They're going to beat Oklahoma every once in a while. But what have you thought of Kenai Walker? And then I have another guy I want to ask you about that. His snap count's gone way down the last couple weeks.
I think Kenai Walker is one of those, like, and guys, we see it every year. It doesn't matter. Like when Oklahoma had the best offense in football, like they're like, why is Lee Morris playing? Why is this guy? Like, just enjoy it, man. Just be there. It's okay. Like, you don't have to find someone to blame for all of Oklahoma's problems. Like that's okay. I think that's kind of the deal with Kenai Walker. Like when something bad happens, like, and if he's involved, it becomes a bigger deal than it is. Like, oh, he got beat. That happens. Like, it's football. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to get beaten sometimes. Guys, I get people mad at me that I'm overrating Billy Bowman. I'm like, we're down on Billy Bowman now? Like, that's where we're at in this thing? I'm not saying Billy Bowman's had the year I thought he would have, but, like, there are people with, like, he should be benched. You've lost your mind. Like, calm down. Like, that's just not reality. So, again, like, I think that's largely the deal. And because he's a corner, and because if you do make a bust, everybody sees it, especially against a good quarterback like Jackson Dart, who's going to make a play. Like, you just don't get away with your mistakes in the same way. So my issue with it is there has to be some understanding from people. Kenai Walker is 6'2", 200 pounds. He is a big corner that can do a lot of things that other corners can't do. He can come up and play run. He can play in that short zone. He can take on a tight end and make a play in space. Like, he can do those things that Oklahoma wants their corners to be able to do because they play so much of that short zone stuff. Okay, great. But when you ask him to turn and run with a 5'11" receiver who can fly, that's a lot to ask. That's not where his game is. So you've got to avoid putting him in those situations as often as you can. And now sometimes he's got to be a player and he's got to make a play. I get that. But I think you've got to understand all the good he brings and not just focus on the only times you notice him on the screen.
There's that play right there that
3rd and 13.
Yeah,
felt like a backbreaker.
It's an incredible play.
It was a little bit of a backbreaker because you're still 100% in the game. I think they're down by 2 at that point, 16-14, especially after Ole Miss missed the extra point on their first touchdown of the second half, and you give that up. It just seemed like that kind of got the ball rolling again. 2 plays later, I believe, is when they hit the double move, and all of a sudden you're down by 2 scores, and we know with what this offense is right now, there's not a whole lot of confidence that you can just necessarily pick things back up.
Josh, one other guy I wanted to ask you about, Peyton Bowen, only 4 snaps on Saturday at safety. What's going on there? Is that a situation where they just really like – I mean, Billy Bowman played 61 of the 63 snaps defensively. Robert Spears-Jennings, 51 of the snaps. Michael Boganowski came in for 4 snaps. I think he actually maybe gave up or was part of that one. I think it was the tight end touchdown in the second half that Ole Miss threw. But what's going on there with Peyton Bowen? Is he just not playing as well? Is it something that they like the other 2 guys? I mean, can you put your finger on why Peyton Bowen maybe isn't playing as much?
You know, what's interesting about it being Ole Miss, guys, is you kind of thought you'd see that 3 down, that 3 safety look that they used so much against Tennessee and with such success. But clearly they saw something different in, Ole Miss running that, veer and shoot or the old Bryles, like whatever you want to call it. And it's all, obviously every coach has their different variations. So I thought Oklahoma did a good job with it. So there was clearly reason for what they did. My guess is it was largely about we've got to put Jackson Dart under some pressure. We can't sit back and let him just deal. With Nico, you're in Norman. He's a young quarterback. We can throw some looks at him he hasn't seen. Jackson Dart, I mean, Brent Venables is a smart guy. He can throw some stuff at him that I'm sure Jackson Dart hadn't seen. But you can't live like that forever. So my guess is they said, okay, we need R. Mason. We need Ethan Downs. We think we can attack their tackles. Who, again, again, as much as you want to say, oh yeah, OU struggled to block Ole Miss couldn't block OU either. Like they just didn't get home as frequently as Ole Miss did, and that was really, to me, one of the big differences in this game. But yeah, I my guess is that it was strictly just how Oklahoma wanted to attack Ole Miss, and it was a little tougher to rotate Peyton in. But when it's that limited, I almost wonder, like, does he have a little nagging thing? Like, is he not quite right? You know, that because that seems too low even for a reasonable explanation.
I was gonna say the final sack total 10-1 doesn't necessarily tell the entire story there. It seemed like Oklahoma, even on the 3rd and 13 play that you guys saw there with Jackson Dart, they had a bunch of pressure. They pushed him out of the pocket. They just weren't able to get home.
And it's we said at the top of the show, different situations. Like when you're down 2 scores,
yes,
you know,
100%.
Ole Miss can pin their ears back and just go after the quarterback, whereas Oklahoma's still trying to get stops. They can't just, you know, blitz everybody and give up stuff down the field. So it was a total different situations, but I think it's also pretty clear that one offensive line is probably just better too.
Yeah, sure. Nine tackles for loss, which isn't a good thing because I don't think Ole Miss is necessarily anything great. 9 tackles for loss on the day for Oklahoma. 9 tackles for Danny Stutzman. He was the team leader in tackles on Saturday. Billy Bowman, Kip Lewis, each with 7. Dasan McCulloch, 5 tackles in making his first start of the season in Oklahoma's 8th game.
I liked Dasan. I thought I was a little surprised over the last few weeks, the kind of reemergence of Jaron Kanik. Like I didn't really understand what Sammy Omosigho had done to seemingly be demoted. Like I know that's not how anybody at Oklahoma would term it, but there's no question Jaron Kanik was eating into his snaps when it felt like forever. Dolby, but when it was Kendall Dolby, Omosigho was his clear understudy, and there really wasn't anybody else getting out there much. McCulloch, I see stuff that you like. He looks more comfortable this year to me in pass coverage. He doesn't look as lost. Looks like he's got a clear idea of what he's trying to do. The first touchdown down the middle, I thought he got a little too wide, and if he had stayed kind of in his lane, maybe he can get a hand and tip that ball. But again, that's nitpicking. Like I didn't think it was terrible by any stretch. And again, I don't think there is a better defender in the flat on this roster than Dasan McCulloch. Like if there is a bubble out there or something out in space, he not only will he blow up a blocker, but he makes tackles. He tackles very well in space. And so I continue to think there's got to be a role for this guy, but he's such a unique player that it's kind of hard to see the obvious path.
Another 4th down stand that obviously they got the ball back for Oklahoma before they ended the first half on the 13-play 92-yard drive. That's a good positive. To be able to keep your team in the game, get another 4th down stop that they critically needed at that time because it felt like that was on the verge of going the opposite direction. It obviously did at the end in the second half, but for the moment, it was a nice little series for Oklahoma to be able to get off the field and kind of bail the offense out yet again.
Yeah, guys, it's one of those deals like
mysterious play call on 4th down too. Just an awful play call.
Yeah.
Eddie, you could answer better than me. How beat up was Ethan Downs? Like he looked like he was fighting through it pretty hard in that game for what I could see sitting at home watching on TV.
Yeah, I think he's playing a little bit nicked up. There's a bunch of those guys that it just seems like they were dragging themselves off the ground a couple times. It's like how much longer can they actually do this? Jackson Arnold being one of those guys after the breakdowns.
I thought he played
quarter.
his balls off.
Yeah, he had to. I mean, he was, and especially late in the 4th quarter when and Kerry said it when we were watching all those sacks back. He's yet again getting to a point where he's catching the football and there's somebody in his face. And sometimes it's more than one person. It's multiple guys because the offensive line is just basically they're getting their ass whooped. It's crazy.
He's the guy moving forward.
I wish I had something to add, but it's the 4th quarter. It was just bad.
I'm not saying just for this season. I mean, like long term. That's the guy that you want to try and build around, right?
There continues to be little moments, and even going back to the first quarter, like Josh said, he looked to be more comfortable than he had been. I don't know if it was basically just the idea of getting benched, and now you can just say, F it. What's the worst that could happen? I get benched again? I think that there is a sense of looseness that's coming with him. And you even mentioned that in talking to Jackson after the game.
Yeah, he was super loose in the post-game interview, and I thought sounded pretty confident, like basically saying like, yeah, like I felt like I played pretty good today, like those sorts of things. So
I thought the touchdown throw to Jacob Jordan there at the end of the first half,
moment.
Probably one of his best plays, just
the
in
best
a Sooner
play.
uniform. You think it's the best play?
Maybe the only
Brennan
other
Thompson throw to in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah,
the
but
deep ball.
that was just a great pass.
Sure.
This was a escape the pocket.
He's making plays.
The other one that I thought of was the Alamo Bowl when he scrambled out and hit Nick Anderson with a hell of a throw.
That's the one to me.
Yeah.
It would be between those two. I think that Nick Anderson throw was unreal.
But given the moment, and to go all the way down the field.
I don't think you're wrong in saying that.
Yeah, and especially in that, like, you forget in that moment, no timeouts. It was third down. Like, it was like basically you're throwing it in the end zone or you're throwing it out of bounds. And for him to, I was sitting there in the press box like, get rid of it. Like, don't take a sack. Because if he takes a sack,
you're not getting any points.
You're not getting any points. So
no doubt.
For him to make that play was huge.
All right, 4-4 now. Maine coming into town this weekend. A little bit of a weird, SEC non-conference schedule here in the middle of November, end of October rather. We're going to be in the middle of November here soon. If nothing else, I guess you try to get some confidence. You try to find some rhythm. Continue some rhythm.
If you can score 70, go score 70.
If you can score 70, you might as well.
Yes,
like there is no holding
back. Score 700. Do not cap it.
And play Jackson and this offensive line. I know you don't want to get guys injured, obviously, but play them for maybe a little bit longer than you typically would in a game like this. You need to get those guys as much reps and confidence as possible going into what I think the Missouri game. That to me is their most winnable game, obviously other than Maine, is their most winnable game left on the schedule. So
LSU and Alabama, obviously, on the back end of that coming out of the bye week. But yes, I mean, God, I can't believe that this is where this is at. But if you can get to 6-4, go into the bye week,
who the hell knows? Yeah, who the hell knows?
But you got to get to 5-4, obviously. We'll be having a much different – we might just start the coaching search next week if they lose to Maine. I will.
This may have a different title if they lose to Maine.
I might not be here because it's not necessarily anything dark. I would definitely get arrested in the early morning hours of Sunday morning if they were to get beat. Probably try and burn down the stadium or something like that. That's not an arson joke either. I'd find other ways. It does seem, though, can you get 2 wins here over the next 2 weeks? Obviously, the game in Columbia just announced on Monday. It's going to be a night game at Faroe Field. Is it Faroe? Ferret? Whatever. Been there before. Faroe Field. I've been there, I think, 3 times. Maybe you can get to 6-4, and that's how you try to start salvaging this season. Get to a bowl game. Get those much-needed, important practices in December, and we'll see where this thing is at. I know that we're going to have much bigger, grander conversations, I'm sure, on the unofficial 40 about Brent Venables and just kind of where this thing goes, because the reality of the situation is they're 4-4, they're 1-4 in conference play, and Brent Venables is now 1-9 against top 25 opponents. 1-9. And I think we all three want this thing to work, wanting to find out a way to do it, but I don't know. Like, there's another part of me that goes, you should never be the head coach at the University of Oklahoma if you're 1-9 against top 25. I know there's much bigger things that go into all of that, but that's god-awful.
Has there ever been a coach anywhere near that at Oklahoma that had staying power? I guess would be the nicest way to say it.
We're not having this conversation right now.
Okay.
There's 4 games left.
It's the facts of the matter, though.
Oh, I know.
And we can't keep running away from them because
we're not.
This
who's
is a
running
bad
away
program
from them?
right
Who's
now.
running away from them?
Nobody.
We literally talked about Venables' future on the post-game podcast for an hour.
Check that out. Eskridge Lexus post-game podcast. It was great. It was good to have your dad, Sam.
Yeah, he was good. Maybe he'll get hired by Scoop. He has
Possibly.
a much more fun job, I would say, right now.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. I don't know. Would he ask the tough
I get
questions?
to every Monday. I get to spend my time watching OU's offense. So that's when everybody's like, "Oh, you got a great job, Josh." I'm like, "Yeah, there's years like this though.
Yep.
That I get to pay it all back."
Not many of them. Not many years like this. But
No, just the last 3.
no, not last year. God.
Losing to Kansas and Oklahoma State's good.
Eddie, god damn it, dude. Come on, man.
There's nothing to be positive about.
No, but don't act like last year there wasn't good moments. There were some really good moments last year.
I'm in a dark place. I told you.
I know you are.
All right. That's going to do
This
it for
is as dark as I've seen, Eddie. This is a place.
Well, I mean, OU's not a good football program right now.
What was it that Aaron Rodgers said about the darkness?
I don't know.
You gotta
Do you have any?
What was it? You got to go into the dark.
You have any mushrooms or hallucinogens that could fix my afternoon?
You need them. You need them.
I do.
Ayahuasca for Eddie.
Ayahuasca. I might need to go on my own journey to find myself. All right, Josh, we appreciate it. I know it's really difficult. You got the Monday Morning Idiot right now on the Crimson Corner, taking a look back at everything from the Ole Miss game that there was a lot of positives about moving into Maine week. It's good to be have the Black Bears come to town. I don't really know what to expect, but we'll see. I know they beat Villanova. That's the extent of my Maine football knowledge. All right. For George, for Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.